Hello and welcome to this marijuana video. So my name is Emily and I'm going to give you first a little bit of a background of what peer education is. So at BGSU's campus, we are peer educators and we're trained either through a weekend-long training or you can take a class for a semester. And basically what we do is we go out to different organizations, departments, offices on campus, and we give health and wellness presentations. So this one will be about marijuana, but we also have ones about self-care and stress, nutrition, alcohol and other drugs, sexual assault, consent, bystander intervention, and a lot more. So feel free to check those out on our website. And then you can choose to request those as in-person presentations, but we also have these options online. So we're going to go ahead and kind of get started here. If you go to the BGSU Wellness Connection website, we also have a resource page of different campus resources that you might be interested in. So they have things like our alcohol and other drugs counselor, as well as the counseling center, psychological services, the health center, stuff like that. So if you're interested, you can pop on over there to our website and check those out right now or after our video. And we're going to go ahead and just get started with the purpose of this presentation. So as I said before, this will be about marijuana. So our goal is not to say like marijuana is bad or anything like that. Basically what we're trying to do is just make you aware of the possible consequences of marijuana use, as well as some of like the physical, the psychological, the social effects of using marijuana, and just kind of give you some of the resources and knowledge regarding marijuana. Throughout this presentation, we do not assume that you do or do not use marijuana. This program is really just meant to educate you and provide you with all of the information about it, so that you can make healthy and informed decisions and reduce any negative consequences that may result from its use. So we're going to start talking a little bit first about what is marijuana. So maybe taking a second to think of your own definition of what marijuana is. And then marijuana, it is a hemp plant, and it consists of green, brown, gray, dried leaves, stems, seeds, flowers, stuff like that. So it is a plant. And there are some different street names for marijuana as well. So we have like weed, pot, grass. It can also be called cannabis. It can also be called Mary Jane. There's lots of different ones, so maybe there's even more that you have heard of that are not listed here. And then what marijuana is it has two different components. So the first component is the THC. So that is the actual component that makes you high. It's the mind-altering ingredient in marijuana. And then the other ingredient is CBD. So that is typically the side of it that is used for more medicinal effects, but it's not going to make you high in the same way that THC would, and it can actually counteract those psychoactive effects. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about different varieties of marijuana. So depending on how the plant is grown and what parts of the plant are used can actually affect the amount of THC and the amount of CBD in the product, and also different processing methods after it has been grown. There are different THC amounts in different things, and it's important to kind of understand that, to understand the amount of high that will result in each one. So we're going to start first with a little bit of an activity. So I have 4 statistics questions, and I want you to try and guess what the statistic might be for these, and then I'll give you some examples, the actual numbers afterwards that you can try and match to them, and then I'll tell you the real answers. So our first question is, in 2018, this percentage of BGSU students reported not using marijuana in the past 30 days. So think about where you think that percentage might be. Our next question is, this percentage of BGSU students have used marijuana every day for the past 30 days. So think about what the percentage might be there. Our third question is the rate of current marijuana use, so that means used in the last month, in 2017, among young adults aged 18 to 25. And then our last question is, this percentage of BGSU students have not used marijuana in their lifetime. So once you have your guesses of what those 4 might be, I'm going to give you the percentages, and I want you to see if you think you can match those percentages. Our first percentage is 65.4%, so where you think that might fit into these questions. The next one is 22.1%, then 84.3%, and 2%. So thinking about what percentages you might put into these questions, they might be similar to what you thought or might be different than what you thought. And then I'm going to give you the actual answers. So for the first question, in 2018, this percentage of BGSU students reported not having used marijuana in the past 30 days. That would be 84.3%. The next question was the percentage of BGSU students who have used marijuana every day in the past 30 days. That was 2%. The rate of current marijuana use, which means they've used in the last month, in 2017 among adults aged 18 to 25 was 22.1%. And the percentage of BGSU students who have never used marijuana in their lifetime is 65.4%. So maybe taking a second here and thinking about these numbers, did any of them surprise you? Were any of them higher or lower than you thought? And maybe why did you think that? So next we're going to talk a little bit about some of the signs and symptoms of what happens when you smoke marijuana. So the physical and the mental effects. So we'll start here a little bit with some of the short-term effects. So any ideas what some of the short-term effects might be? So there's physical effects as well as other effects. So maybe taking a second to think about ones that you have heard of. Some of the physical effects could be dry mouth, elevated heartbeat, loss of coordination and balance, slower reaction times, reddening of the eyes, and elevated blood pressure as well as munchies. And then some of the changes of your interpretation of different stimuli, everything seeing heightened, profound, or funny, or thinking that it's leading to creativity, stuff like that, as well as the euphoric effect. So ongoing social and psychological experiences of being intoxicated with marijuana. So these can include an altered state of consciousness as well as his or her perceptions while intoxicated, as well as differential associations. So behavioral satisfaction that is derived from friends who use marijuana. So like fun times when high with friends, stuff like that. And so there are some different short-term effects as well as long-term effects. So these short-term effects that we just discussed are going to be 2 to 3 hours unless you continue to smoke. And that THC is going to be rapidly absorbed in your brain, but it can also be rapidly absorbed in a placenta. So it's very important for pregnant women, especially when we talk about a placenta, to understand that that THC is going straight there. And then it's also important to understand that THC can be stored in our body fat. So everyone has body fat, even if it's just your essential amount of body fat, and that is where your THC is going to be stored. So another more long-term effect would be amotivational syndrome, which is when you have chronic use of marijuana that leads to a decrease in motivation and specifically decreasing your desire and your productivity. So some of those more long-term effects might be lethargy, a poor short-term memory, difficulty concentrating, as well as lingering lack of interest in pursuing their goals. So it's found to have a negative effect on your critical thinking skills, as well as impairing your attention, your memory, your learning, as well as even a potential loss of IQ points with continual heavy use. So it's really important to understand, especially during our adolescence and young adulthood, the effects that this can have, especially in college, because attention, memory, learning, critical thinking, those are all very important things while you are a college student. So we're going to move on kind of like with those things that we just talked about, moving on to our thoughts, feelings, values, and beliefs. So if you go to the BGSU Wellness Connection website, we have our core values worksheet, and I'll kind of show it here for a second. But going there and just opening up that document and reading through the rating system before you start, and then just kind of going through and completing the worksheet. So it has different things on it. You can rate them from 1 of it's definitely not important to 5, this is very important in my life. So just taking a second to go through those, feel free to pause this video. And then coming back, just understanding as we look through these different things, how could marijuana affect these goals and these core values that you've laid out, these things that you think are important? Do you think that marijuana use could affect them, could not affect them, or any goals relating to school, as we talked about before? And some additional kind of stats with people in school is that a study of college students with heavy marijuana use made more errors, they had more problems paying attention to changes in their environment, as well as they had more problems learning than students who didn't use or used less often. Research also shows that marijuana use affects education by lowering your academic performance, increasing your truancy and dropout rates, reducing the likelihood of graduation, interfering with your future goal setting or life planning, as well as a higher risk of future unemployment. So those are all very important things that most people care about. So I think it's very important to recognize when usage may become problematic. So thinking about how would you know if usage was problematic? So there are different levels of smokers. So there's an infrequent smoker, which would use less than 2 times per week. And just kind of to give you a little visual, that urine sample will test positive for a few days after that last smoke. A regular smoker, which would smoke 2 to 5 times per week, your urine's going to be positive 7 to 21 days. And then in chronic smokers, so that's someone who uses daily or almost daily, their urine is going to test positive for 30 plus days. And kind of with that, understanding that hair can test positive for even longer than that. And so there's kind of some different thoughts going into that of like, when does it become problematic? So taking a second to think about when, if you or a friend used marijuana, when would you think that the limit would be? So some things that I've heard in the past of when people would say that it has become problematic would be if people begin to use like a grocery or rent money for marijuana, if people are no longer attending classes or if they're no longer going to events or things that make them happy, or I've heard people who say that marijuana can become a problem if they're no longer spending time with the people or the friends that they enjoy. So maybe thinking about those things, but also different things that may be more relevant to you or your friends' lives. So now we're going to do an activity that is going to kind of stimulate what it's like for your brain when you're sober versus if you are high. So what I'm going to do is I need you to pull out either a piece of paper and a pencil, or you can even just use the notes section of your phone, your computer, whatever you're on right now. But pulling that out and just coming up with a blank piece. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you 10 words, and then I need you to not write anything down, and then at the end, once I'm finished with all 10 words, write down as many as you can possibly remember. Okay? And then we'll see how many you remember at the end. So don't start writing until I'm finished with the 10 words. Okay? So paying attention, our 10 words are scholarship, pencil, computer, holiday, class, camp, teacher, brain, environment, exercise. So now write down as many as you can remember. And then we're going to do this entire activity over again, but we are going to have a volunteer come and help me who is going to help stimulate what it's like if you are high. So this is Kate, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to read you a different set of 10 words, but don't write anything down until I'm finished with the 10, and then write down as many as you can remember. Okay? So, allowance.
A, B,
Outline.
C, D, E,
Laptop.
F, G,
Trip.
H, I,
Location.
J, K, L,
Course.
M, N, O, P,
Coach.
Q,
Intellect.
R, S,
Setting.
T, U, V.
Workout. So now write down as many as you can remember from that, of the words that I was saying. So looking at the amount of words that you got the first time versus the amount of words you got the second time, you probably got less the second time, and that's because of the distraction, the disruptiveness of the noise, and obviously you're not going to hear the ABCs in your mind while you're high, but marijuana is able to mess up those neurotransmissions to specific areas of the brain, specifically your normal information transfer and your memory. So going back to that like values worksheet that we've done, as well as just some of the different things that we've talked about with stats on college students and stuff, how could this loss of information transfer and memory kind of affect your goals or affect your values? So taking a second to do that. And then thinking as well, if you were trying to do homework or in a class or something like that, trying to pay attention is like trying to pay attention while the ABCs were being sang. Okay, and then we'll move on. So for our next little thing, we're going to actually do an activity. So I have a volunteer here, Kate, who has some fatal vision goggles on that simulate what it is like to be high. And then I've got some little stress balls that I'm going to throw at her. And basically, my instructions to her are only catch the black ones, okay? So, what I need you to do, and then the other ones are just stress balls, so just let them fall, okay? Only catch the black ones. Oh.
Oh no.
There you go. You got one. You can just drop it. You got two. Oh, wait. So also just taking a second here to kind of talk about, as she was grabbing those balls, she was grabbing the red, but she also went for the black. And so obviously we cannot exactly show what it would be like to be high. We can just do the physical impairment. We can't really match the like mental effects of being high. But some consequences of distorted information and of missing the important visual cues. So as you saw, she grabbed the red ones, but she also grabbed the black ones when I told her only to grab the black ones. So if you're not able to distinguish even like the color of this ball properly, it stimulates like a cognitive impairment of not recognizing or responding to the sensory input that results in marijuana use. So this could be really important, especially driving, with like stoplights and things like that. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the withdrawal from marijuana. So maybe thinking about what you know about it, or maybe you don't know a lot about it, and that's okay. And then some of the symptoms that people typically report when they choose to stop using marijuana would be irritability, sleeplessness, a decreased appetite, anxiety, as well as craving the drug. So these are all things that can make it really difficult for you to abstain from the drug. And it's estimated that about 9% of users will become addicted to marijuana, and that number increases as you look at people who started at a younger age. So people who started at a younger age have about a 17% chance of becoming addicted. And then when we look at daily users, they have a 25 to 50% chance of becoming addicted to that drug. And to kind of show you what that looks like, 300,000 people admitted themselves to rehab facilities for marijuana addiction last year. So just understanding that this is a problem and it's something that is not necessarily talked about quite as much, but it is still definitely a necessary topic to talk about. So next we're going to talk a little bit about the laws surrounding the policy of marijuana. So we'll talk about it in the university or public university level, which would be BGSU, and then we'll also talk about it in the Ohio, like more statewide level. So maybe thinking about what you know about the policies in the state level as well as on campus. And then from here, understanding, we'll talk about Ohio first, and then we'll kind of talk about how that's different on campus. So marijuana or drug paraphernalia possession can both be minor misdemeanors if you are caught with them in the state of Ohio. So possession has to be less than 100 grams and for personal consumption only. It's not a jailable offense, but there is a $150 fine if you're convicted, and there's a possible driver's license suspension of up to 6 months. So that can also affect your car insurance or cancel your policy even. So that's important to think about, especially if you're driving under the influence of marijuana and the consequences that could come with that. So recreational marijuana is not legal in Ohio. However, medicinal marijuana is legal in Ohio with a medical marijuana card prescribed by a physician. So, for medical marijuana users, they are allowed to use the specific marijuana that has been prescribed to them, and they're not allowed to give that to anyone else. So, understanding kind of with this that legalization has kind of decreased the perceived risk of marijuana, but understanding that there still definitely are risks. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the policies if you were to get in trouble at Bowling Green. So, we have the Bowling Green Marijuana Alternative Program, or the MAP program, which can help dismiss your charges, but there's a few things that you have to qualify for in order to go through this program. So our first thing is you have to pay a $150 fee for the program, plus court costs, which are typically about $61. You have to be a first-time offender of any charge. You have to attend a drug education course and assessment, complete 6 hours of community service, complete 5 drug tests over several months that all come back clean, and avoid any new charges while the case is pending. So obviously this is something that you don't necessarily want to go through, but it is something that is available that can help get those charges dismissed off of your record if you do fall into those categories. And then with that, talking a little bit about on campus, marijuana is still illegal federally. So BGSU receives money from the federal government, so therefore we have to follow federal regulations. And with that, marijuana by the FDA is illegal, and it's considered a Schedule 1 drug, which is the worst schedule for risks of abuse. And with that, federal law does not recognize or protect marijuana use, and it can prosecute people who are otherwise protected under those state-mandated legislations. The reason why marijuana is not approved currently by the FDA, the reason why it is still illegal federally, is because there haven't been enough medical trials, enough research to kind of prove that it's safe or to prove that there is an effective use for it in the medical world. It's also impossible to kind of control the amount that's used as well as the potency of it. So right now it is still illegal federally, and because we receive those federal funds, it is illegal on campus. Even if you have a medical marijuana card, you would have to go off campus to obtain that marijuana, use it, and then come back to campus. Recreational marijuana is completely illegal, and understanding that this can then affect your FAFSA as well, because that is also federally funded money. So we're going to talk a little bit about hemp, which you may have heard about in more recent media and stuff like that. But hemp was legalized in Ohio in July of 2019, and hemp is defined as less than or equal to 0.3% cannabidiol. And so with that, hemp is going to be mostly that CBD. And so when we're talking about hemp products or CBD products, they're not going to make you feel the stereotypical high because they have a very small percentage of THC in them. It is impossible to have a CBD that does not have THC. It just has a super tiny amount. So if you do use these products, the buildup of THC in your body and in your blood could potentially show positive on a drug test. So if you are using hemp products as well as CBD products that are typically available because of this new legislation, so just making sure that you're aware of that possibility. So marijuana use can start out inconsistently, and it can potentially progress to more continuous use. And then with that, it's possible to lead to the use of other addictive drugs or contact to people who have access to other drugs. So it's important to recognize that and understanding why people use marijuana. So some people say that they use it when they're stressed, or they use it to relax or feel good or sleep better. But just kind of thinking of whatever that may be, trying to find alternative ways and healthy coping mechanisms to reduce that stress, to reduce that anxiety, and to improve that sleep routine. So there are lots of different things that you can do. You can feel free to check out some of our other videos. Different ideas would be meditation, as well as eating healthy, exercising, music, things like that all can help to relieve that stress, to relieve anxiety, and help you sleep better. So kind of in conclusion here, we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about the use of marijuana, the ways that it affects your body, as well as the policy around it, as well as BGSU and stuff like that. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Wellness Connection. You can email wellness@bgsu.edu. You can also find more information on our website, which would be the BGSU Wellness Connection, or feel free to find us on social media. On Twitter, we are at BGSU Wellness. And just a reminder, if you're interested in becoming a peer educator, you can also reach out to do that as well. And then I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation and that you've learned something from it, and have a great day.